Welcome everybody. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Put your name in there if you want. If you don't want, totally up to you. My name is Amanda Teacher. I am the faculty coordinator of instructional design at Reedley College. I come from the world of EC, so I was a tenured child development instructor before I transitioned into this role. And I'm also the OER coordinator for Reedley College and the OERI ASCCC Region A lead. So I've got my feet in all sorts of OER worlds across the state. So I love being able to present to my own colleagues at our district. Totally hope this can be as interactive as possible. So please interrupt, ask questions as we go along. I've tried to minimize the amount of slides so we can do some show and tell and ask a little bit more questions on the how-to and the logistics of what we're going to talk about today. I don't take a lot of pauses just because I talk too much. So feel free to just start talking and interrupt. If you wait for a pause, it's never going to happen. It's just one of my weaknesses in life, but people have learned to accept it okay. All right, so without further ado, we're going to talk today about creating a ZTC OER Canvas shell. This is one of my favorite things to talk about and really advocate for strongly. I love the opportunity to keep students within Canvas as much as possible to reduce that technology overload. And I really love being able to create Canvas shells that are ultimate expression of how we like to teach, and we're not beholden to the structures of a traditional textbook. And this is where OER really gets its legs in the freedom that it provides. My biggest favorite expression is that OER is the ultimate expression of academic freedom. By choosing that, we truly do get to teach the way that we think that the course and the content should be taught. So if you're not sold yet, I hope you are by the end of the presentation. So today we're just going to level set a little bit and do some vocabulary checking to talk a little bit about what ZTC, zero textbook cost is, and what open educational resources are. Some of the places that you can go to when you want to locate quality open educational resources, and I'm not saying they're all vetted for quality in the resources repositories we're going to take a look at, but just some options. And then looking at, okay, evaluating that content, what are we going to take a look at, the accessibility, those things to be aware of as we're bringing OER into our content and possibly have to remediate and fix. And then more of the logistics on building a shell. And this is where I hope the questions can come and we can really do just some interactive processes on what it actually means to build that shell out. So why ZTC? Most of you are here. I'm not trying to convert you, but we know that it's saving students a lot of money. We know that if you teach with a traditional textbook, more than 50% of your students really aren't buying the textbooks. Even if you require it, there's a way around it. So OER really allows students to have access to course content on day one. Even if it means doing a low-cost homeworking system that's partnered with the OER, I'll always advocate for that over higher priced options on both fronts. So I don't need to try and sell you. Hopefully you guys are here because you've already bought in. We can definitely do the sales pitch for why OER at a later time also. All right, let's do a little bit of understanding of terminology. We like to throw ZTC OER around synonymously. They are in fact two different terms that we can apply. So ZTC just means zero textbook cost course. And this means that we're bringing in a variety of different resources, which might include open educational resources, but it might also include things that are free to use on the web, things that our library has a license to, things that our college has a license to. It simply means the students themselves are not paying anything. So just as the name implies, it is a zero textbook cost course. It doesn't mean that you don't have a material cost. So that's also sometimes can be confusing. You can have a ZTC course that also carries a material cost. Lots of different opinions about whether that's the right or the wrong way, but it does not imply if you have a ZTC designation, especially in our district, that there's not a material cost. So that's what a ZTC course is. That's what the ZTC means, is it's encompassing multiple different resources to create a zero cost for students. Open educational resources on the other hand, are resources that are openly licensed. So most of the time they're free. They might have a cost if it's printed, but they can be, we'll look at the 5 Rs in just a second, but they have a Creative Commons license to them. So they are licensed different than a traditional license. That's what makes them an open educational resource. Within State Center, we actually have a low cost designation as well. I put $50 on here, but I'm fairly certain it is actually $40. If the course materials as designated in Follett are under than $40 when they're aggregated together, then for State Center on self-service, you'll get that little low cost designee. There isn't a statewide requirement of what LTC low cost means. Each college will choose their own. Some colleges don't even have a low cost designation. We've chosen to, and I do think it's beneficial because for some courses, it's just not possible to get down to zero cost. But low cost is much better than $200. And we really felt passionately that those faculty that have tried their hardest to get down to under $40, they should be able to be honored with an icon as well. So if you go into self-service, you'll see those two icons, ZTC and LTC. Questions? How we doing? Okay? All right. So when we are looking for open educational resources, what OER means is they have what's called that 5R framework. And we'll go through this rather quickly. What it means when something is openly licensed versus a traditional copyright, full copyright license is that copyright is giving you Creative Commons copyright. It's giving you opportunities to retain it so you can keep it as your own, which a traditional copyright does too. But it also allows you to reuse it. You can use it in an unaltered form in your course. You can revise it, so you can change it, modify it, adapt it, do whatever you want with it in your course, which is what is going to be imperative when we're looking at building our Canvas courses using these materials. You can remix it, take an OER from here, take an OER from there, possibly take a ZTC and put it into your course. But OER is what gives you the Creative Commons license, gives you the permission by the author to do just what we're going to take a look at and then redistribute it. So not only can you retain, reuse, revise, and remix, but you can also put that all together and say, here, look what I've created. Here's a new iteration of this original work. See if it works for your course, which is a great part. All of these are great parts of OER, but when we're looking at how different people teach, it's nice to be able to take that textbook and say, I'm going to reshuffle these chapters. I'm going to get rid of this, get rid of that. Now I have a new textbook that works for me. Hey, does it work for you? And I can redistribute it. So hopefully, if you haven't been sold, now you're sold, because this is why it's that ultimate expression of academic freedom. All right. So as we look at creating our Canvas course from OER, one of the important things to keep in mind is that you are not stuck with just one resource. You are not stuck with just one textbook, one article. When you utilize OER, you can take 5 different types of OER from all these different places and remix them and revise them in a ways that's perfect for your course. When somebody makes a tradition from a traditional way of teaching with one textbook, this can be the hardest things to wrap our mind around, is that we can use freely without additional cost to our students, multiple different resources to create the perfect course of our dream that perfectly matches that curriculum outline of record, that perfectly allows students to meet their outcomes. But where are some of the places that we can find our resources? And I'm going to try my darndest to multitask and open up these links and put them, you know what, actually I lied. I'm just going to give you the link to this and you can get these links and then I'll put them at the end. But here, so here's a link to the presentation. And this should allow you to click on any of these links that I'm talking about. And it should. If it doesn't, let me know, somebody, once we're done. All right. I'm back to sharing the Gamma app, right? Thumbs up. Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Susie. Okay. So here are some of the most often used OER. In all transparency, my favorite place to start is I just do a Google search and change the advanced options to just Creative Commons licensed content. And that's a great way to start to find openly licensed content. But you can also go into the resources. The second place that I'll always start is the ASCCC OER I created curated content. And I am going to take just a second to show you guys this because it is curated by other California Community College faculty. So it's a very intentional choice on what's included in here by other California Community College faculty. So if you see, you can search by CID, you can search by discipline, you can search by degree pathway. I like to start by discipline, and almost every discipline is listed. The smaller, more obscure disciplines, I'm not going to guarantee it's here, but ASCCC has done a very intentional job of trying to get as many discipline representatives as possible to curate these contents. Now, because I'm teach ECE and I'm a selfish person, I'm going to click on my discipline so you can see what is listed here. But go in there and check your discipline and see what's there. When possible, the content in here is listed by CID, and so you can just choose that CID and be able to click on that OER resource. And so here's where you would want to start looking at all of the different resources that are within the course that you're teaching to be able to start that process of curating them together. Because going back to our topic, when you are creating that Canvas shell out of OER materials, you really want to exercise that option to take a look at all the different OERs that are out there for that discipline and see what's really going to fit best. You don't have to. If you have a textbook that you like, that's OER, you can just simply start from there. I love being able to pull from different resources, and I'll show you how this works in a Canvas cell in just a second. So here are some places to look. OpenStax, great place to start. Merlot has a combination of openly licensed content and free to use content. So just be careful when you're in Merlot that you take a look at the license. OER Commons, another resource. OERI is a curated called a referatory. So it doesn't house the OER, but it's going to take you to where it is. LibreText just won a contract for the California Community Colleges. So that's got some really cool bells and whistles, homeworking systems, different platforms to be able to do some vocabulary, speaking, reading. But that also is a great repository for discipline content. I'm pretty sure we've got one on finding OER content sometime this week, maybe Friday. I'll have to look. But if not, there's plenty of past presentations on how to find OER content. Whatever campus you're from, you have an OER coordinator that is happy to help you find content as well. All right. Other sources that are worth bookmarking, if you didn't know, MIT, all of their content is openly licensed. They're one of the first founders of Creative Commons licensing of content. So it's a great place to be able to look for content. Just MIT OpenCourseWare, type it in, it'll come up. Project Gutenberg has a ton of really great resources as well. These are in the public domain, meaning there's no attribution that's needed for them. Literature, history, humanities, lots of great content to bring in there as well. And since we're talking about ZTC and not just OER, don't forget about your campus resources. Go to your library. I love integrating films on demand into my courses to be able to supplement. And this is where that beauty of creating a fully functional ZTC course comes in, because you can bring in those video resources, and we'll take a look at what all of that looks like as well. How are we doing? Questions, content, freaking out yet? No, you don't have to freak out. This is the fun stuff. Yeah, Adrian. I had
Oh,
a hand come
I
up.
was
Oh,
I was trying to get unmute myself. Um, so are we gonna get a copy of the presentation? Because I'm you can't I can get to the links though. Are we gonna get a copy of this or no?
yes. So
Okay.
the link for the presentation is right there. Whatever campus you are from, wherever it's housed, we'll make sure and send out that. And I put the link right there, but At the end, I can also download it and upload it. I just haven't double checked for accessibility. So that's my disclaimer right now when I do that at the end. But long
Okay.
story short, yes.
Okay. And
Worst case
then
scenario, you can email them, email me, and I can email it to you.
yeah. And then I don't know if this is the time, probably at the end maybe. So I definitely do a lot of that revising, all the things, revisiting and stuff. But I make my own content from
Mhm.
other people's content, but I don't do
Yep.
all that copying, making sure I'm not copying. I don't copy directly. I make my own content, but I use them as references and resources. So um,
Yep.
is
So
that
you're
something?
an OER creator.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm doing.
which is
Okay.
fantastic. Yeah,
All right.
but do the
Thank
same
you.
thing. Yeah, any
Okay.
of the yeah, exactly. If you're using content from other and remixing it, any of the lecture videos that you create, if you're willing to openly license it, then you're an OER creator.
Okay.
I do the same thing too.
All right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Hmm.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, so as we start now building our course, we want to take a look at that OER content that we're bringing in. And this is not just for OER, this is for any textbook. So I'm preaching to the choir. This is something that you would do with any content that you're reviewing, any new textbook that the publisher puts under your nose, you're going to do these things. OER is no exception. We want to make sure that we're looking at it for accuracy. Now, the benefit is for OER, instead of a traditionally published textbook from Cengage or Macmillan, is if there are things that aren't accurate, if there are things that aren't current, if there are things that aren't correct, you can go in and simply change it. Another reason I love being able to cut and paste and put directly on it in my Canvas page within the Canvas module is that if it's research from 2020, I can go in and see, oh my goodness, there is a much more recent research, take out the old research and put it in there. Traditional textbooks, you can't do that because it's fully copyright protected. A revise within a Creative Commons license, that revise allows you to do exactly that. So you want to go through and make sure that OER content is accurate, change it if you need to, and before you put it in your Canvas show. Accessibility as well. Another huge reason why I'm going to advocate for putting that content directly on a Canvas page. Hope Tech Canvas Native Accessibility Checker makes it 100%, 1,000 times easier to create and remediate the content and make it fully accessible. If you're linking out, you don't have any control over making sure that's accessible. You cut and paste and put it on your Canvas page. You're able to change that content and make it fully accessible as the law requires. When we are looking now at the OER to include, we want to make sure that it aligns to our the course outcomes, what the course level is. I like to start with the concept of backward design. And I'm trying to flash through my slides in my head, and I don't think I did a slide specifically on backward design. Hold on. Oh, I did. So we're going to talk about backward design next. Hold, please. All right. So alignment. So you want to make sure that the content you're coming aligns with your course outcomes. We'll talk about the process of that in a second. License clarity. For the sake of this presentation, I can't dive into all of the different levels of license. If you're concerned about whether or not you can use content, if you can mix it together, definitely have a conversation with your OER coordinator on your campus. Here is my hack though, is I make sure that I keep the citation with where I'm bringing it from. Then I don't have to worry that I'm mixing licenses that can't mix. If I say, hey, this content came from this and I cite it like we should, then I don't have to worry if those licenses aren't compatible. Have a conversation with your OER coordinator about that. Lots of different resources. For the sake of this presentation, I can't go into the remixing of license, but that's something that you just need to be aware of. Lots of different OER evaluation rubrics that are out there. If you want a more traditional way to evaluate the quality of the rubric, the quality of the OER, I will say, though, that there is a pervasive ongoing myth that OER is of less quality than traditionally published textbooks. Huge myth, been disproved. Many different research studies that are out there. I actually just sent someone a whole list. I should have put them on here that disproves that OER is of just the same amount of quality as a traditionally published textbook. So I always like to acknowledge that myth and dispel it whenever I can. All right, so let's get down to the logistics of this. So what does it mean when we are creating a ZTC or OER Canvas shell structure. Before we even get to the actual Canvas shell and putting things together, we need to engage in backward design. Um, Sometimes I hate the word backward design because it's not backwards, it's how we should be designing. Why does everybody think it's backwards? But that's a diatribe for a different day. When we're starting to design our Canvas shell, we want to start with our student learning outcomes. I am a huge fan of taking those student learning outcomes and I like to break them up into the skills I want my students to know. Sometimes this translates to the objectives in the course, depending on how intentional your discipline was on creating those objectives. Sometimes they need to be broken down more granularly. But I like to look and see, okay, what are the outcomes of the course and what are the skills that my students need to learn? Then I decide, okay, how should this be broken up into the different modules of my course? Because you want to have that entire structure. And this doesn't matter if you're teaching a fully face-to-face, a hybrid course, or an online course. If you're designing a Canvas shell structure and you're delivering your course content within Canvas, then start with the design of a fully online course as far as the content. You're still going to be in class doing activities, but if you're designing that shell structure where you're delivering all the content within Canvas, you want to design thinking, okay, this would be a fully online class where I'm having to put all the content in there. So you want to create that full 8 week, 9 week, 18 week, whatever you're designing for structure in your head. So you've broken it up and said, okay, here are the skills, here are the student learning outcomes of my course. What are the outcomes for each of these modules? And I know if you've taken an online teaching certification, this is something that has been pounded into your head. Those learning outcomes for the module are going to be very important because as you start curating the content for your course, the temptation will be to throw in all sorts of things in there. If you don't have a guidepost on what content should be within that module, it will be, I promise, very difficult to resist the temptation to just keep throwing stuff in there. And then you totally lose the beauty of being able to use OER to build that Canvas course. So you create your overall structure, and then you decide, all right, whatever, 18 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever it is, what are the learning outcomes for each of those modules? That's the structure that you want to start with. So we're going to go over and I'm going to show you an example. Oh, Susie, you're amazing putting in help like that. I love it when Susie's here. Okay, let's go over here. And I'm multitasking over here. That's not what I wanted. Oh, so share. I'm sharing Canvas now. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to truncate this down. Whoops. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Hold on. There we go. Okay. No, I'm sharing chaos, right?
We see two screens.
Which is not fun to be able to look at. How's this? Much better, right? That looks a much more enjoyable site. Okay.
BDM 15 modules.
Yes, yes. Okay. So, um, so here is how you want to think about starting to design a course. So you're going to lay out that entire course structure. And you can see right here, this is a 14-week course. It doesn't really matter what the structure is, whether it's 9 weeks, 10 weeks. You want to decide, okay, what does those modules of content look like? If you design it in weeks, if you design it in units, you're just deciding, okay, what is the objectives for those modules? Because that really is going to be, again, that guidance of what is the content I'm going to be putting in there. Because when you're curating all that content and saying, okay, this is the shell that is going to be a comprehensive with everything that's in there, you need to make sure that if I've said these are the objectives for the module, I've provided the student with all of the content they need to meet those objectives. That's a responsibility that we take on when we're saying, I'm going to design this course perfectly. It's the fun part of course design. I absolutely love it. Couldn't imagine doing it other way. but we are starting with that backwards design and taking on that responsibility. So once we've done it, we have our course objectives right here. So if I go here and I've designed, all right, here are the course objectives for the course. Now what I'm doing is curating the content that is going to help the students meet those course objectives. And if you look at the modules, now it's going to have all of that content delivered that enables the student to meet those objectives. One of the things that we have to start being okay with when we're doing this is that our modules are going to be a little bit longer. Now, this is where your course design, you have to make a decision. Personally, I really like to have modules that are longer, and when I've queried students, they agree that have shorter bits of content on there. Now, remember, this might seem like, oh my goodness, those are insane modules, but you have to remember every single piece of content the student needs to know to meet these objectives are within that course module. They are not navigating outside of Canvas at all. So everything that's on that textbook, every YouTube video, every film on demand, every article, everything that a student is going to need to consume in order to meet those objectives are within the Canvas module. I query students every couple of semesters and ask, do you want longer modules or do you want longer pages? The strong majority is they want longer modules with the content. And the reason is because you can break down the content much more granularly for students to be able to enter and exit when they don't have long amounts of time to be able to study that content. So they can see, all right, I stopped on observing cognition. I know the next content is there versus I stopped on observing cognition, but the module was, astronomically long. And so I didn't know I have to go in and stroll through that. So that's why you're seeing long modules. It's a very intentional course design that I choose to make, and it's made based on feedback from my students. Okay, so you can see right now that all of the content then is delivered within the context of the module. Any questions so far? Good? Okay. Oh, let's see, my screen is frozen. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Right. So that's what the overall structure is going to look like. You want to make sure as you're doing this that it's consistent. Each module has a consistent structure, and that's where you've got your objectives at top and they consume the content. I really like having the assessments that they need to complete after consuming the content at the bottom of the module. Whatever design you're going to do as you're creating that Canvas shell structure, you want to make sure it's consistent. Students are incredibly smart at figuring out your unique course structure as long as you maintain that consistency. It's another reason I love having everything within the modules. I'm not asking students, go here, go to the files, go click on this, go click on that. They simply start from the top of the module and they work their way down the module. Everything they need to do within that week, within that unit, whatever that time-bound structure is found within that module. And I found students can very easily adapt to that structure, even if it's very different than what they might be used to. It is good course design, though, as well. Questions? Doing good? Okay. So what is the process of creating those shells then? So step by step, you verify the OER. You've said, okay, I have these 3 different textbooks. I'm going to create my content. I will start from my course outline of record, if I agree with it, which hopefully you do because you helped design it. That course outline of record that has that lecture content structure on everybody's course outline of record that's got that outline. And then I start, if I either rearrange that to the structure that I like. Remember, you don't have to teach in that sequence. You just need to cover that content. So if I decide, hey, I like my lecture content to be in a different sequence, I move that structure around, then I create those modules. So we've created those modules. And now we're and done our objectives. And now we're starting to provide the content, put that content into the module and test and preview and see what it looks like. And I'll go through and show you, go step by step through each of those modules so you can see what that structure looks like. One thing that, if you remember when we looked at my modules, and we'll go back there in just a second, is that everything is embedded within the Canvas page. I am a huge hater, that's a very strong word, but I really, really dislike linking out from my Canvas modules. I enjoy the being able to keep students within Canvas. If you haven't figured it out, I have significant ADHD. So if you move me out into someplace else, I will 100% start watching that YouTube video of the cat chasing whatever it is that they're chasing. It will distract me and I won't stay hyper focused. So I empathize with students that also struggle with that. So I like keeping them within Canvas. And this allows me to do that by not linking out to other places. When we natively cut and paste and put things on Canvas pages, it provides a better mobile experience for students. Canvas itself is mobily responsive, which means as long as things are cut and pasted and put onto Canvas pages, they'll be responsive to whatever mobile device a student is using, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a teeny tiny cell phone, big cell phone, whatever it is. If it's cut and pasted and put it on a Canvas page, then it'll be mobily responsive for students. That's not always the case if you're navigating them out to a different web browser. It allows you to add context and instructions along with the content. And we're going to take a look at some examples in just a second. But when you're going through, and especially in a fully online class, but I'll say this for a face-to-face as well, we wouldn't walk into a face-to-face class, walk in, push play on a video, and walk out. Walk in, throw them some articles, and walk out. When we create our course structure that has a video, article, video, textbook chapter, that is what a student will be experiencing. We don't give it any context because they're just clicking through and going, oh, here's a video. Oh, here's an article. When we take the opportunity using ZTC resources and take that text content from the textbook, bring it over to a Canvas page. Now I've got a video that describes that content perfectly. I'm going to put it down there. I'm going to add some of the content that I want to talk about, tell students, hey, this is a really great video that's really demonstrating this concept we're talking about above. Make sure and pay attention. Then I can have some reflection questions all on that same page for students. So they're not going and clicking through different pages and going, oh, here's a video. Oh, here's an article. What did I need to pay attention to? It allows us to have more control over that experience and contextualize everything that we're offering to students, which is why we're the teacher of the course. We get to offer that insight to them. Doing this works well with H5P. If you love experimenting with H5P, YouTube videos, anything that's iframe compatible, which means that you can take it and embed it within a Canvas page and be able to create that very streamlined experience for students. Huge advocate for that. Sometimes there might be preference for external linking, so I'd like to be able to be as fair as possible, even though I'll never advocate for external linking. But here are some arguments that people have in favor of them. If a source is updated frequently, so if you are linking to an OER textbook and the author is incredibly active and loves to update it and keep it fresh, then when you're linking over to that resource, you know that that link is that content will be updated and you don't have to worry about going into your Canvas course and updating it. The flip side of that is if they're changing things you don't want to be changed, you don't get control of that either. So that's my con, which I said I was going to try and be fair. So anyway, that's a positive thing. It'll always contain the description of what the link contains. We can not be very good about doing descriptive links, and so students won't know what they're looking at. But when you're linking out over into a web page, it's going to be very clear. Here's what the content is because they're going to that direct web page. But one of the things to be aware of if you are external linking is what's called link rot. So you do also, this is kind of a con, if you're doing external linking, you do have to double check and say, okay, this video has now expired. This OER resource has gone away, whatever it might be, you do have to check those links regularly versus the content that you cut and scraped and put onto your Canvas page, always making sure you have those attributions. Questions? Doing okay? All right. So as you're taking and scraping that content from those OER resources, you want to make sure that you're carrying those attributions over correctly. Attributions are a little less stringent than that APA, MLA, Chicago, whatever formatting that you're using. Really, you just need to think of the acronym TASL. When you're bringing content over from an OER space, all you need to do is think tassel. So you want to bring over what the title of the content is, who the author is, and this is all if you can find that content. Sometimes in OERs it can be more difficult to find this, but you want to have the title, the author who created the work, whether it's the individual person, the team, the institution, the entity. The source, I would say this is probably the most important thing to make sure to bring over is that source link. So if you do get something wrong as far as the title, author, or license, people can always follow that source link and find where you're bringing that content. When I was first starting to build my Canvas shells, I wasn't great about doing that attribution. So now as I'm going through and teaching the courses, I am trying to figure out, okay, where did this content come from and get that attribution in correctly. So you have that source, you have that link, and then you have that license. So you see an example down right here. We've got the title of the content, we've got who the author is, and we've got the license, and then we've got the link. So you don't necessarily have to have it in that tassel format. This is not the formality of APA or MLA. It's just making sure here are the elements that you want to make sure and have as much as possible within your attribution on that Canvas page. And when we do some show and tells, we'll take a look at it in just a second. As we're bringing content over and creating these Canvas shells, as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure and check that accessibility. And putting it directly in the Canvas shells, we've got two fantastic tools that makes it super easy. We'll do some show and tell in just a second on that. Running the Canvas native accessibility checker will fix many of the issues. Using the Pope Tech checker, which all of our campuses have as well, will remediate any of the other remaining ones. I like to do both because the Canvas accessibility checker is fantastic to fix table accessibility issues. And the Pope Tech one really helps with things like headings and alt text to capture that heading structure that many of us are guilty of not doing correctly. Want to make sure as much as possible to caption the content. Now, if we're relying on YouTube videos, sometimes this isn't going to be possible. Take a second to look and see what the accuracy of that YouTube video is. If it's not accurate, you want to make sure and have a disclaimer to students that there are some inaccuracies of this video and be aware that if you have a student that needs it remediated, that's one of the things that you're going to have to work with your DSPS office. I will say that since I've been in this position, the native YouTube captions have gotten so much better. So they're more reliable. But if you are using a YouTube video, you just need to be aware of that, especially if there is no captions. That's something that you're going to need to be responsible for figuring out as you're putting it on there. You will need to make sure, just like we looked at on the link rot, that you maintain and update your ZTC shells. So sometimes this can be more work than if we just took a traditional publisher textbook off the shelf and tell the students, read chapter 1, I'm going to get the next edition, read chapter 1 and go through it. But as publishers are just as frequently changing the different editions and instructors are have to changing those things around, I really don't think this is any more work than those that use a traditional textbook to do. So if you are creating your ZTC shell, the things that you want to think about is before the semester starts, run that link validator to see if any of those links have been changed. If you go back and change it, it doesn't mean that things still won't break. So make sure and let students know if they experience a broken link to let you know. I am always astounded at how reluctant students are to tell me that something isn't working. So I always explicitly tell them, If you run across a broken link, if you run across a video that isn't running, please let me know and I can troubleshoot it. Every semester, I need to remind students they have the authority to do that, to let me know I'm not perfect, things break, so please let me know about those things. Mid-semesters, check and see what's working and what's not working in your course as far as the resources that have been delivered so far. Are the videos that are embedded, are they too big? Are they too small? These are the type of design elements that we want to think through when we design our course, and getting that direct feedback from students is super helpful, especially as you first start doing this. Once you've done it for a couple of semesters, you'll really figure out, okay, here's my groove, here are the things that work. As soon as you change something, you want to make sure and reassess. I've been loving using HTML to make my courses super design fun. And I have to get feedback from students because sometimes I get a little crazy in the different things that I put in there and it could be overwhelming. So I take that feedback from students. At the end of the semester, document what worked, log any broken or outdated resources. You can create a file. One habit that I've gotten into is that as soon as a student says that something is broken or they've noticed the information is incorrect, I go into that Canvas shell right away and I go in and change it. I used to create a little file to go back and change for the next semester, and I found that was a more overwhelming task to simply go in when a student said, hey, this looks like it's broken or this data seems like it's out of date. I go in and I change it right away. That's a much less overwhelming process than having this long list of things that were broken in the shell that I need to go back and fix at the end of it. Okay, I think we were going to go. Okay, before we go in and take a look at some of these examples, I know I've been talking a whole lot. What are some of the questions or concerns that you have as I try and multitask and move over to this? Nothing? Okay. All right. So hopefully I'm sharing my shell right now. As we talked about, the biggest benefit, well, there's lots of benefits, but the thing that I love the most about designing a ZTC Canvas shell is that you have the opportunity to do those mixed modalities. So I can pull content from an OER resource. I can have content that I've created, some words that I've created. I can also have my own lectures. So right here, this is a lecture that I've recorded. I have content that I brought over from an OER source. And instead of having it like we do in traditional Canvas modules and how a lot of us have designed traditionally, having, okay, read chapter 3, now watch this video and read this article. I get to break up that content and say, all right, I'm talking about the effective method of socialization. Here is a paragraph that I have literally cut and pasted from an OER textbook, put right here, added my own personal lecture, added some more content from an OER textbook, added a lecture from me, taken a YouTube video that says, hey, here's what we're talking about when we look at operant conditioning as a method of socialization. Here is a fun video that you've probably all seen, maybe not anymore because Big Bang is more my era, that shows operant conditioning in action, talk more about another concept, have some more OER content, have a video or a image that's describing the content, and then more information from a different OER source, and then all of my references. So we can see how designing that page to have all of the content together instead of linking to a textbook chapter, then having some out of context videos is a much more streamlined way for students to engage in content. It also allows us to utilize some of those really cool ZTC resources that are out there. They're not openly licensed, but they might be free for us to utilize and embed them to create those visuals that we need in our course. I teach a child growth and development course, and there are so many cool visuals out there that really help to describe some of the content that is openly licensed but the videos are not. So I can break down the content. All of this words are coming from an OER source. I can create vocabulary. So if there is, or I guess this is an example. So if I need to clarify something, if I think, oh, this content is a little bit difficult, I can create that clarification right there as it goes. This is where I'm having fun with HTML right now, but describe it a little bit more, add a YouTube video, and break up that content in ways that I think is going to be more digestible for my students. Here is where I'm able to take videos that aren't, where am I? Videos that themselves aren't openly licensed, and I have embedded them with the images. So these are from two different sites taken. Okay, here's a video that describes the content. Here's an image, video, image, and embedded them. Oh no, I gotta fix that. Um, for students so that it's a very visual piece of content. And I've been able to mix and match ZTC and OER resources in those pieces of content. So same thing right here, break it up so they can see very clearly what I'm wanting to walk them through. We've got OER content. We've got ZTC content. Okay. Um, I'm just going to keep going. So here is same thing, taken a ZTC content. So these images are not openly licensed, but they are free to be able to use. And I've mixed it with ZT's or OER content. And then I can put in a YouTube video. So we're able to mix those medias together to provide students a very streamlined opportunity to consume the content and meet those objectives of every single of those modules and provide them the content, embedding the TED Talks, those types of things. So a couple more examples. Oh, I think I clicked out of that. But so here's all that I'm doing is, oh shoot, I knew I was going to mess up. I had an example of where I took this content and put it on my course, and then I got click crazy. All right, any questions now? All right. What are the questions that you have about the process of doing this? Any questions? That's the official end. Sorry. Getting kicked out, it throws off my groove. Susie. Questions, thoughts? All right, we'll finish up, and then as you guys are processing, we could take a look at that. So designating your course as ZTC, just to follow up, because we do have an issue across State Center of instructors saying, hey, my course doesn't cost anything, so I'm not going to even bother to indicate it in Follett. We do want to make sure, I guess I can stop share here. We do want to make sure that students are aware of which courses are zero textbook cost. If you've taken the time to curate things together, we want to make sure to have that nice little icon on your self-service. So make sure that you do go on to Follett, or you go into My Bookstore, I think that's what it's called, in Canvas, and designate that you're using OER or ZTCs. And that's where that icon is going to come from. So when students are looking in self-service, they have the opportunity to see which course is not going to cost them anything additional from their tuition to be able to take. What are some of the next steps? Start exploring. Go and look and see what's out there. If you looked for OER in the last previous to 6 months, it really is an explosion of the content that's out there. OpenStax, OER comments. I've even found some really great things in the Canvas Commons to be able to bring over into Sandbox and see what other people have created, especially looking at different assessment options, quizzes, those types of things. LibreText, see where you can find that content and curate it together. Start with one module. Start those objectives, figure out what objectives you want to meet for that module, map it out. Okay, here's the content I need to cover, and start bringing things into that module. Remember, we're cutting and pasting them onto pages to create that content. And then look to see what are the library resources that you want to bring in through Films on Demand. Connect with a librarian to see, all right, what are some resources that I didn't even know we have? Lots of different articles out there. There's a lot of different openly licensed articles. And what openly licensed articles allow you to do, same thing as an OER, is say, I don't want my students to read this entire article. I'm going to cut and paste from this conclusion spot and put it in there. And if it is the CC by license, you can change around that conclusion and put it into your own words, put it into words that maybe are easier to digest for students, and add it onto that Canvas page. Something if you are a more organized person, maybe you want to create a spreadsheet that has all the list of the content that is in your lecture outline, lab outline, and then all the OER resources that align to it. I'm not an organized person, so I just like to cut and paste and bring over the attributions and then change and modify as I go on that Canvas page. But whatever process works for you, then that's going to be the process that works for you and be able to do that. Okay. All right. So we do have a couple of minutes that we can show you how you would cut and paste and bring over and add content from an openly licensed uh, textbook into a Canvas page. We can ask questions. What would you guys like to do? Do you want me to show you some of the logistics of how this works?
Sure.
Or do you have any questions? Sure. Okay. That's the spirit. So within a Canvas module, again, we've created our Canvas structure. I'm going to create a Canvas page. And let's say I'm going to create a Canvas page on observation do's and don'ts. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and share my entire screen so you guys can see everything here. Okay. So now you should be able to see both windows, right? Thumbs up. Perfect. So I'm going to create a page. Let's call this my observation do's and don'ts. So I've created my page. And now I've identified an OER that was written by some brilliant author. Her name's Amanda Tainter. She is fantastic, one of my favorites. And I want to bring her content over and put it on my Canvas page. And this literally is as simple as it is. So I'm over here in LibreText. I'm just going to highlight, bring over. I've just highlighted everything I want to bring over. I love keyboard shortcuts, so I do Control C on my keyboard, Control V, ta-da! Now my OER content is over into my Canvas page. I've brought over my attribution, and look, there's some accessibility things I need to fix. Canvas is letting me know, so I can remediate those right there. This is telling me I need to merge the links. They're redundant links. So I've done that. Because Amanda designed that LibreText, my heading structure should be good. But now let's say that I also have some videos that I want to add in from YouTube about how to observe. So I'm going to go over and do my YouTube link. Oh, I can either do it this way or I can grab the YouTube. So let's just do objective observation. I like going directly into YouTube usually, but let's just do for the sake of doing, all right, how to observe. So I'm going to embed this video. Let's do medium. And here's my video, and I tell students, don't forget our, actually, I'm going to not do our structure so I can show you how to check the accessibility. This is a wonderful video demonstrating the concepts we've been looking at and correct spelling. Let's put, whoops. How to observe. So we've got that video in there. And let's say over here, there's some additional OERs that I want to bring in. I think I want to bring in this text. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to bring my attribution over for this page because that's all that I need to do is have the attribution for the page. Put it down here, brought my attribution. Now let's say I want to bring in a films on demand video. It talks about observation, or it gives them some observation practice. All right, here we go. I'm going to embed it. Let's see. Let's fix my redundant link issue. So I've just gone down to Pope Tech. If you don't use Pope Tech, it's fantastic. Look at my heading structure. A heading outline, I want to fix it. I want that to be a 3. And now we've created a ZTC page. Right here, we've got content from one OER resource. I've got a YouTube video talking about it. I've got some other OER content, and I've got a Films on Demand video explaining more about it. So it's as simply as that. And you're adding the content that you find to be applicable. You can bring in a different article as well. I'm going over to finding an example as I talk. Is there any questions the next 3 minutes? Oh man. No? Surely some question. I was trying to find an example of a article embedded. I thought I had it pulled up, but I didn't. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing and in the next 3 minutes, see if anybody has any questions. All right. That was a lot of learned, a lot of information. Your campus instructional designer is absolutely happy to talk through page design and walk through how to design content using text and video. I know all of them would be super love to do that with you. It's the bread and butter of our instructional design job. Yes, Sue is fantastic at Fresno City and would love to help with page course design, I can promise you. But I really can't espouse enough how much more fun it is to design courses in this method, to be able to take the specific content. If you've ever read a chapter from a traditional textbook going, well, that's the stupidest paragraph ever, you can just delete it. You don't have to put it in there. You don't have to expose your students to it. You're able to take the content that you specifically have curated together, put it on those Canvas pages, and be very clear to students. I have created this course specifically for you. Everything that's in here, you could say, all honesty, is exactly what you need to know versus somebody else's textbook that you could say, most of this stuff is good. We can pretty much ignore the second half of chapter 2 and some of chapter 3, chapter 17. Don't bother with that one at all. You've specifically taken the content that they need to know. All right. So without further ado, I am officially done. Thank you very much for coming. Oh, and Susie, ever the wonderful PD supporter. There's more that's happening with OE Week if you want to dive more into accessibility. Antoinette's going to be talking about that. Oh, she talked about that yesterday and then doing another presentation tonight. And Stephanie is doing designing renewable assignments with OER tomorrow. So thank you guys for coming, and I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat if you have any questions for me specifically. Happy to answer them, but your campus instructional designers and OER coordinators are absolutely fantastic as well. Thank you guys for coming.